right, Santa Rosa, how's everybody doing? It is great to be here at Redwood. And we are really, really happy to be here. And there's a couple of things I want to say by way of introduction. And the first of all is I'm really happy to be here. I'm Ray Johnston, and I'm one of the pastors at Bayside. And is my wife here? I know she was coming to church. Oh, yes. This is my wife, Carol. Oh, Carol, and would you just wave and say hi? Okay, this is my wife, Carol. And next to her is my son's wife, Gia. And we are thrilled to be here. And I want to say this, y'all have incredible weather. Is it like this year round? That's what we thought. We actually know that. We used to live in Rohnert Park, okay? And in the G section, okay? And for some reason, my wife didn't want to live in the C section. So we live in the G section, Rohnert Park. Now, would you pull out your message notes? And while you're getting these out, I'm going to do an overview of the entire book of John this morning. So if any of you are going, I have always wanted to get the background and a seminary level message on the Gospel of John, you are here on the right morning. If any of you have ever been going, I would like to be through something so boring and unimportant that it doesn't matter in church, you're on the wrong morning. Now, a friend of mine has a kid. Did anybody raise kids here? Anybody currently have kids? Was anybody here, in fact, a kid at one point in time? And he said his little daughter was on the swim team. And she swam, and she loved every single thing about it. I mean, she loved the team. She loved the sport. She knew everybody on the team. She knew people that swam on opposing teams. She knew all the parents. This little girl was like the social butterfly of the entire thing, and she was just amazing. And the problem is that she came in dead last in every race, every year for 3 straight years. Never came into second, dead last in every race. Didn't even look like she was trying some of the time. She was so bad. And so the parents, after the 3rd straight year of her on the swim team, they thought, well, she's certainly not going to want to swim a 4th year. She's starting to become aware that she's not good at this. And the 4th year rolls around. She's 10 years old, and she goes, hey, I'm going to sign up for the swim team. I want to be on the swim team. So I'm like, great. That's fine, honey. So parents are like, whatever. So they sign her for the swim team again. She's so excited. It's her first meet of that year. And her mom goes over and meets her, and her mom looks her right in the eyes, and she says, honey, now I want you to go out there, and I want you to win this race. And the little 10-year-old girl's eyes got really big, and she looked at her and said, it's a race? It's a race? Nobody told me it's a race. I thought it was called a swim meet. She just thought she was there to meet people. She goes, I had no idea. She goes, it's not called a swim race, it's a meet. Every now and then, you get some information that changes the entire way you look at everything. Okay? And what I want to do this morning is we're going to ask and really answer one question. Here it is. Who is the most influential man in the history of the world, and why is it important to connect with this guy? Now, I'm going to put a picture up. Has anybody ever seen this guy? Who is that guy? That is the most interesting man in the world. Notice for church purposes, we have substituted Dos Equis beer with Coca-Cola, okay? Now, he's the most interesting man in the world, okay? I would like to submit the most influential man in the history of the world is Jesus Christ. Now, somebody's saying, wait a second, there's a whole lot of other contenders. There are a lot of influential people. For example, does anybody recognize this guy? Yes. That is Steve Jobs. Raise your hand if you own any kind of an Apple product. Any kind of an Apple product? Okay, would you agree? Incredible influence in our generation, okay? Or anybody recognize this guy? Who is that? Johnny. Incredible musical influence in some of our generation, okay? Or does anybody recognize this guy? Yeah, Bob Hope, incredible worldwide influence, especially among troops that were overseas, things like that. And what's interesting is all of them had major influence. Matter of fact, and we've all lost them in the last few years. And one person said this just a few years ago, you know, we had all these folks living, and now we have, here it is, no jobs, no cash, and no hope. just hope Kevin Bacon doesn't die anytime soon. Now, here's the deal. The reason for that stupid joke is this: almost every person of high influence, the minute they die, their influence goes downhill, and within about 2 generations, they're never really thought much of again, except for Jesus Christ, who, when he died, was at the lowest point of his influence, and he has arguably been the most influential person since he died. Okay? Now, and if you don't believe that, I have given you on the front some research that I did about how influential is he. Now, I'm going to give you a quote at the top. Okay, a Yale historian that I don't think is a Christian said this: regardless of what anyone may personally think or believe about him, Jesus of Nazareth has been the dominant figure in the history of Western culture for 20th centuries. If it were possible with some sort of super magnet to pull up out of history every scrap of metal bearing at least a trace of his name, how much would be left? And for example, Jesus, the world we live in, has the following things because he lived, okay? And equality. In Rome, equality was not even an option. The entire society was broken down into 5 categories. You couldn't break rank. It's still that way in a lot of countries in the world, okay? And matter of fact, Cicero said rank must be preserved, and then all of a sudden the Bible comes along and says there's neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male or female. You are all one. One. Jesus brought the concept of equality. Aren't you glad he brought that, okay? Or children. They were viewed so lowly. The Roman philosopher Seneca said this: we drowned children at birth when they are weak and abnormal. Jesus said, let the little children come to me. Matter of fact, that's why we do day camps on all of our campuses, okay? Because we serve somebody that said, let the little children come to me. Women, if you are a woman, would you raise your hand? Okay, good, you know you are. The view of women was radically altered in a positive direction by Jesus of Nazareth. Here's a letter from a Roman letter. It said this: if you are delivered of a child, if it's a boy, keep it. If it's a girl, discard it. Luke says, and this is shocking for this time, a large number of people followed Jesus, including women who were never included in any leadership settings back there, okay? Compassion. Look at this. Christians established the first charitable hospitals, the first homeless shelters, the first homes for orphans, the first outreaches to prisoners, hospital patients, and soldiers, and the first society for the prevention of cruelty to animals, all launched by Christ followers. Okay? Here's another one. Forgiveness. The first woman who was full professor at Princeton University said this: the discoverer of the role of forgiveness in the realm of human affairs was Jesus of Nazareth, and literature and culture, it would be dismal without the influence of Jesus of Nazareth. Check this out. Christ-inspired classic works by Bunyan, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Pascal, Solzhenitsyn, Dickens, Milton, Defoe, Tennyson, Tolkien, Langell, C.S. Lewis, and much, plus musical works by Bach, Handel, Mendelssohn, Beethoven, Mozart, and Lincoln Brewster. And many others, including great works of art by Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, Rembrandt. Okay, the Library of Congress of our country. How many books about Jesus are in there? Here it is. 17,279 separate books about Jesus. And some of you are going, yeah, well, that was written a long time ago. Philip Yancey says there have been more books written about Jesus in the last 30 years than the previous 19 centuries combined. Okay? And when you just take a look at this kind of thing, for the next 21 weeks, all of our churches are taking a look at the Gospel of John to ask one question: who in the world was this guy, and how can I let him influence my life? Now, if you're going, well, I would love to study the Gospel of John, what's in it, okay? This took 3 weeks to prepare, and we are going to give you, I hope you keep this for the rest of your life. If you would open up your message notes to the inside, this is a graduate course level overview of the Gospel of John. And so I'm going to actually have to check with you occasionally, and I'm going to go, are you still with me? And you will say yes. Even if you've fallen asleep, wake your husband up and make him say yes. So are you all still with me? Yes. Very good. Okay, here we go. This is an overview of the Gospel of John. For the rest of your life, as you study it, you will be able to orient yourself to it. Now, I also want to say this. Some of you are going, it's summer. why are we studying the Bible during summer? We'll come back to this right before the closing announcements, but way too many people during summer go on, and some of them take a vacation from God, and September arrives and they're in worse shape spiritually. In our churches, we actually feel like most people have some free time in the summer. Why not take it to build a thriving relationship with God so you arrive in September in better shape? That makes sense? Okay, so how do we do that? Here's an overview of the Gospel of John. First of all, John is in 7 major sections, okay? Chapter 1, and here's the theme of each chapter. Chapter 1, Jesus arrives, okay? Then 2 through 4, Jesus connects. And it's interesting. When Jesus connects to people, there's one of two responses. There's either belief or unbelief. And then the next section, chapters 5 to 12, Jesus challenges. Jesus never told people what they wanted to hear. He was never politically correct. He challenged them, and that was met by either transformation, where I take the challenge and he changes me, or opposition. Quick question. Is the same thing going on in America right now, in California? Yeah, Jesus is still trying to connect and challenge people. And it's either met with belief and transformation and my life changes, or unbelief and opposition. The same, Christians get all shook up. Oh man, Congress passed some law. It's been going on for 2,000 years. Okay? And so Jesus arrives, connects, challenges, and then 13 to 17, Jesus does what? He teaches, and amazing subjects in that section. And then 18 to 19, Jesus is crucified, then he is raised, and then he restores. That's the overview of the book of John. Now, this is fascinating to me. The first 12 chapters take 3 years. The next 5 chapters take about 3 weeks, and the last set of chapters take approximately 3 days. So the book speeds up. Okay, now, what's the emphasis of the entire book? It's 2 major things. Number 1 is the first 12 chapters is Jesus' great claim, I am God's son. And how does he, and by the way, there's 3 sets of, here's the deal. Jesus, first 12 chapters, Jesus says, I'm the Son of God. And he makes a great claim. The whole rest of the book, he backs it up. He backs it up. And it's this 3 sevens, okay? First of all, he makes 7 I am statements. By the way, y'all still with me? Okay, good. He makes 7 I am statements. I am the bread of life, the light of the world. I'm the gate. I'm the good shepherd. By the way, this is important. Got your pen out? Circle this. I am the circle resurrection and the life, okay? And we'll come back. A theme in John is this. Everything has to affect my life. I'm the resurrection and the life. In other words, if I claim to believe in the resurrection, but it doesn't change my life, then I don't really believe in the resurrection. And as a matter of fact, he goes on to say, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. I'm the true vine. So 7 great claims. Then he performs 7 miracles. For example, the first one, he changes water into wine, okay? A friend of mine has a great phrase. He says, Jesus can turn water into wine, but he can't turn your whining into anything. That's a great phrase, okay? And so he's 7 great statements, 7 great miracles, and then 7 witnesses to back it up, okay? Now, I also want, and so you'll be reading this as we study the Gospel of John. Now, here's the deal. The key verse, I love it. John, at the very end of his book, by the way, spoiler alert, John gives you the reason he wrote the book. He comes out of the closet and says, here's why I wrote it. John chapter 20, the last verse says this, these are written, it's a body or outline there, these are written that you may believe, circle the word believe. These are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and by believing you might have life in his name. So if you go back up one, first 12 chapters are written so that you might believe, and the last half is written that you may have life. And I love this. The entire book is written to change our lives. It is written to strengthen your faith, and when your faith gets stronger, your life changes. Does that make sense? So these are written that you might believe and have life. And I want to give you kind of an overview, just a quick thing of why I think this was really written. A few years ago, I was asked to speak at an event at Arco Arena. Anybody been to Arco Arena? Yeah, it's where the Kings used to play. We went to, so I said, what am I speaking to? And the guy said, we're going to fill it with teenagers. Would you be the speaker? So I said, sure. So they fill Arco with teenagers, and I'm the speaker, and we give an invitation, and it was one of the come forward invitations, and I mean, like hundreds of kids streamed to the front of this thing. It was amazing. And then it's about 45 minutes after this thing's over, and I'm just sitting on the edge of the stage talking to one teenager after another, and I look down, and sort of a 2 teenagers away is really sharp-looking girl, looks like she's maybe a high school sophomore or junior, and tears are just streaming down her face. So she gets to me, and I said, hey, what's up? And she composed herself for a minute, and I kind of realized she had all of her friends were with her, and they were kind of behind her, and a bunch of them had come forward and given their life to Christ, which means they were finding forgiveness and freedom and a new start and all this amazing stuff. And she kind of, when she could compose herself, she said, I want what they have. And then she said, but I can't have it. And I went, wow, she wants what I want. Forgiveness, eternal life, the presence of God, the power of God, being part of the family of God, having something bigger to live for than just yourself. She recognizes I need that, but she looks at me and broke my heart with one phrase. She said, but what do you do if you don't believe? Like, I want that, but I can't have it because I don't believe. What do you do if you don't believe? Raise your hand if you've ever doubted, and your hand better go up. Okay? I mean, I was an atheist growing up, so I get that. What do you do if you don't believe? What would you say to her? So I looked at her. I was kind of taken back by it for a second, and then my heart just broke for her. So I looked at her and said, describe for me the God you don't believe in. And she began to describe this vindictive, judgmental, harsh, condemning God. And after she was done, I looked at her and said, I have really good news for you. I don't believe in that God either. The starting point to a thriving, healthy, emotional, spiritual life is to get rid of the false misconceptions about God that have mainly been crammed down your throat by some kind of toxic Christian, okay? And you know what I love about this? The entire book of John has been written to heal your image of God, to heal our images of ourselves, and to heal our image of what life could be like if we would connect with this Jesus who connected to the most unlikely people. Does that make sense? That's why we're studying the Gospel of John. And so I'm just going to take a couple minutes and give you an overview. Okay, you all ready here? Okay, now the 4 most important things in the book of John are right here. Okay, number 1, the major themes. John wants every single human being to know 4 things. And number 1, he wants them to know who Jesus is. He wants them to know, first of all, who Jesus is. The talk show host Larry King was asked this question. I loved listening to that guy, but he was not a believer, and he was always grilling Christians, and he was asked, is there someone you've never interviewed that you'd love to interview? You know what his answer was? He said, yeah, I'd like to interview God. And they said, what's the first question you would ask God? And he said, my question is this: did you have a son? He's trying to get at what's the heart of Christianity, okay? And John is written to answer the question, who is Jesus? And you know what he says is, and by the way, this is very important if you're not going to get sucked into some cult, okay? In John chapter 1, it says this: in the beginning was the... Okay, now I'm going to pause right. Who's the Word? Okay, good. Every time I ask that in an audience, half the people say God and half the people say Jesus, okay? Later on in John chapter 1, it says, the Word became flesh. So who's that? Jesus. So when it says in the beginning was the Word, who's it talking about? It's talking about Jesus, okay? In the beginning was the Word, okay? So we're going to try this one more time. This is church. It's not a trick question. Who is the Word? Jesus, okay? In the beginning was the Word, Jesus. And it says this: the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So the theme of John chapter 1 is Jesus is God. By the way, you know what John chapter 1 is? God's here. God's here. God has shown up. And then it goes on to say this: through him, Jesus, all things were made, and without Jesus, nothing was made that has been made. In other words, it is going to blow our minds about who Jesus is for 21 chapters. I'm going to show you a quick video here. This is awesome. A comedian was once he said, Jesus is like head and shoulders, miles above anybody in history. If you had to introduce him to a crowd, how would you introduce him to do it justice? So he said, I'm going to give a shot at this thing. Check this out.
If I had the pleasure of bringing out Christ, this is just how I would do it. It ain't got to be the way you do it. You might not think it's just right, but this is how I would do it. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce a man who needs no introduction. His credits are too long to list.
Love that.
He has done the impossible time after time. He hails out of a manger in Bethlehem, Jerusalem, by way of heaven. His mother is still headlining in the Catholic Church today. His daddy is the author of a book that has been on the bestseller list since the beginning of time. He holds the record for the world's greatest fish fry. He fed 5,000 hungry souls with 2 fish, 5 loaves of bread. He can walk on water, turn water into wine. No special effects, no camera tricks. He has a headshot on every church fan across the country. Even before the kings of comedy, he was hailed the king of all kings, ruler of the universe, Alpha and Omega, beginning and the end, the bright and the morning star. Some say he's the Rose of Sharon, and some say he's the Prince of Peace. Get up on your feet, put your hands together, and show your love for the second coming of the one and only.
Or as Billy Graham said, I'm going to put this on the screen. When I want to take a look, when I want to see what God is like, I take a long look at Jesus Christ, and we're going to do that all summer long. Number one, John wants everybody to get a clear vision of who Jesus is, which will heal their image of God and heal their image of themselves in their future. Number two, a second major theme that rolls through John is this: both grace and truth are essential. Both grace and truth are essential. Now, I got to make sure you're with me on this one, because in my opinion, the number one need of every church and every Christian in America is to get this 100% right, okay? So y'all still with me? Okay, that was terrible. Okay, y'all still with me? Good, here we go, okay? Get your pen out and circle some stuff. You got it, here you go. It says, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of, circle the word grace, and full of truth, okay? Now, it doesn't stop there. Later in John it says this: for the law was given through Moses, and then what does it say next? Grace, and truth came through Jesus Christ, okay? Now, what's going on here is this. The Bible basically, well, let me put a picture up here, okay? Anybody ever driven across this? The Golden Gate Bridge is held up by two towers. The entire Bible, the entire Christian faith is supported by two pillars. One is grace and the other is truth. All the way through the Bible, the two main pillars, the two foundations are and truth, okay? And which means I'm 100% committed to the grace of God, and I'm 100% committed to the truth of God. And it's used to, when you get this in your mind, every time you turn the Bible, you're like Jesus, a woman's caught in adultery. These guys throw her in front of Jesus. Jesus looks at her, and first of all, he says to these guys who are all truth, no grace, he goes, okay, whoever's without sin, throw the first stone. They all drop their rocks and split. So Jesus is left with her right there. And he looks at her and says, neither do I condemn you. That's grace. And then he says, go and sin no more. That's truth. The entire Bible is grace and truth. Okay? Matter of fact, when we launched Bayside years ago, if you want to know what Bayside stands for, the first two letters, the B is biblically based. We believe 100% of everything in this book. It's what we teach and it's how we live. Does that make sense? So we are Bible based. Okay, that's which one's that? That is truth. The A stands for this: atmosphere of grace. We believe all people matter to God, and all people ought to matter to every Christian in every church. Would you agree? Okay, and the fun thing about that is this: when you are fully committed to grace and fully committed to truth, it's like you have taken two live wires together, hooked up, because you're right where God wants to be, and sparks fly in the power. By the way, you will also be shot at by both lunatic fringes. You know what I'm talking about? Because here's my analysis of culture, okay? Some Christians are all truth. I believe in truth. I have a Bible and I beat people up with it every chance I get. Raise your hand if you've ever met one of these people, okay? Now, there are other people that are going, oh, I'm all grace. God loves everybody. I'm okay. You're okay. Sleep with whoever you want. Do whatever you want because God's a God of grace because I'm all grace, but I've thrown this out. Would you agree? And there are lunatic fringes on both sides that somehow are missing the exciting thing. It's interesting. If we were going to go sailing and you had a really good sailboat, you would want two things. You would want a sail to catch the wind, and then you would want a rudder to stay on course. The grace is the sail where you catch the wind of freedom and forgiveness and you keep going forward, and truth is the rudder that keeps you on track. The grace of God frees you from your past so you can look forward, and the truth of God keeps you on course so you will have a future that doesn't have regrets. Does that make sense? And the most exciting thing about being a Christian these days, and I think the hardest thing, is being fully committed to both truth and grace at the same time. Does that make sense? And in my opinion, it's interesting. For about 50 years, I think we had to teach truth-based Christians grace. Now, with millennials coming in, I think we've got to teach grace-based people to live with truth. That make sense? But when you get both those live wires to come together, and I have a couple comments to make about that. Number one is this. I was telling your staff today at our staff meeting, about a year ago when we were asked to come in here, I kind of walked in going, okay, here we go. And because usually when a church goes through turmoil, here's what happens. All of the healthy people leave, and all the toxic, cranky people stay. So all the grouchy people stay so they can vote no on stuff, and all the really great, I love God, love people, they leave. And so Jim Holst and I came over here, and driving home, I wish I had a tape of our conversation. We said, this is the only, all the grouchy, toxic people must have left, because what's left here are some of the nicest people in the world. And by the way, don't you feel that way? Look at the person next to you. Aren't they just like a great human being? Look at the person on the other side. Maybe not, but no. And we were sitting here going, which is why, if you would look up here, okay? We are refreshing some of our core values, and we'll have a conversation about that at some point. Oh, right now, you are part of a 7-church team. We have 7 churches, but we're one church, 7 locations, okay? And which means we have a church, there's Santa Rosa, which is you all, which everybody's thrilled about. Okay, and there's a church in Granite Bay. Okay, and then there is a church called Bayside of Blue Oaks, and there's a church called Bayside at Adventure that's about 2 miles away from that. Okay, and then there is a church in Midtown Sacramento called Bayside of Midtown that is the fastest growing multicultural church on the entire West Coast. Okay, and it was fast. I'll give you. Let me finish this. And we have a brand new church that we are all. This is your church too. We are all launching. It's about 3 weeks old now, and it's Bayside in Davis, California. Okay, and the cool thing is this. You know where our next church is going to be? We were asked, and we said yes. We are planting Bayside in Folsom Prison. And we were actually asked to plant our church in Folsom Prison. And so we are planting Bayside. Matter of fact, if any of you in here have a secret life of crime, we could be building your next church right now. We have also been asked to go to San Quentin. And so it's fascinating, some of the stuff that's going on. We actually believe when we were asked to come in here, we thought we would love to launch Bayside in Petaluma and Bayside in Novato and just see some other things go on around here. And this will be ground zero for all that happening, okay? But what's interesting is this, we need to tell everybody who exactly we are. And so one of the statements we're going to come out is this: our job is to love everyone without sacrificing our convictions. Isn't that healthy Christianity? Our job is to love everyone without sacrificing our convictions. And we think if you can live that way, you take the grace of God and the truth of God and you hook them together, which means I don't sacrifice my convictions to be more politically correct, but I also love everyone. Would you agree that's harder? Absolutely. But it's exactly when the wires come together and the sparks of God fly. Does that make sense? Jesus, both grace and truth are absolutely essential. Okay? The third theme, y'all still with me? Good. The third theme is this: authentic faith leads to transformation. Authentic faith leads to transformation, okay? And here's, every time you read John, you see the word believe and live, believe and live. He says this: these are written that you may believe Jesus is the Christ and the Son of God, and that by believing you may have, circle the word believe and circle the word life. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. In other words, all this stuff hooks together, okay? Now, why does that matter? Because in my opinion, Christians have somehow messed up grace and truth. Would you agree? They've also messed up Jesus, because churches have been about themselves instead of about Jesus and all this kind of stuff, okay? The other one is this: in my opinion, when it comes to this whole thing, okay, we are supposed to believe and live. And I'm going to put a chart up that it kind of explains how we're wired, okay? And it's devotion and action. Do we have that? Here we go. In my opinion, something's gone wrong in the American church. And it's this: we are all devotion, no action. All believe, no live. So, in other words, if we say, I'm the resurrection, we go, oh, I come and celebrate Easter now. I'm not going to live any of this stuff, but I'll see on Easter and I'll also see on Christmas, okay? And it's all belief, which means this: it's enough, like you say, are you a Christian? Yes, I'm a believer. There are a lot of people going, oh, I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus. Now, I believe in Jesus. I don't actually do anything he said. I believe in Jesus. I don't actually live like he lived or love like he loved, but I believe in Jesus. Is this making sense? And that leads to this, okay? That means lots of Christians and churches make a point, they just never make a difference. They make a point, they never make a difference. That makes sense? Which is why you could shut the doors of the average church in America, and the community would never even know they were gone because they have such little impact. Can you imagine what this community would have been like 6 months ago without your church when the fires hit? I mean, people flocked here for that kind of stuff. Why? We want to be more than make a point. We want to love people in Jesus' name and make a difference. That makes sense? Okay? It's funny. One of our goals at Bayside is this. I would like to be absolutely, completely loved and appreciated by people that don't agree with us. That'd be great. Okay? Now, that leads to this. Okay? Churches produce people that are apathetic spectators instead of servants, because they go, hey, what do you do at the church? I come, I sit, I sing, I leave. That's it. I never actually roll at my church and make a difference. By the way, if you've never volunteered for anything, this is your summer. Volunteer for something. I don't even care what it is. Volunteer to eat the donuts, whatever it is, okay? Just get involved, okay? Then you go here, which means we produce people that are self-centered instead of sacrifice, and the big one then is this, okay? Is that at the bottom? Okay, well, let me go here. When I am all devotion, no action, all believe, no live, we produce people that are apathetic spectators who are self-centered instead of living to sacrifice. Does that make sense? And we are called to more than that. And the book of John is written to strengthen your faith, which will then lead to my life changing, okay? What do I mean by that? Faith is like, has anybody seen the movie Avengers? Well, let me see your hands. It's a church. Go ahead. Go get them up. Okay? Okay. In Avengers, this is not much of a spoiler alert. In Avengers, they have 5 infinity stones. Okay? And if you have one of these infinity stones, you have this incredible, powerful thing. Okay? That if you use it is a very powerful thing. Okay? So that's the infinity stones. Okay? You have an incredible infinity stone that if you use it, unleashes power, and it's called faith. And depending on which direction you put your faith, it has a specific result. So look at the chart below. For example, when I put my faith in God's power, it actually frees me from fear. In other words, fear, can't sleep, stressed out. What do I need? I need to put my faith in the power of God, okay? Or go to the right-hand side, anxiety. I put my faith in the promises of God. It loosens the grip of anxiety. When I put my faith in the grace of God, it frees me from guilt. When I put my faith in the presence of God, it frees me from loneliness. When I put my faith that God is working, in other words, it frees, like if I'm discouraged, I just need to go back and go, is God still working? And when I put my faith in this, by the way, raise your hand if you've gone through some tough times. Matter of fact, raise your hand if you've been discouraged in the last year. Raise your hand if you've been discouraged in the last month. This morning. Raise your hand if the main source of that discouragement is sitting right. No, don't raise your hand. When I'm discouraged, the route out of discouragement is not a better husband. That might help. The route out of discouragement is not better circumstances. The route out of discouragement is to strengthen my faith. And when I put my faith in, matter of fact, look at this, when I put my faith in the power of God, the promise of God, the grace of God, the presence of God, the fact that God's working, and the fact that God has a purpose, and then all of a sudden I start realizing, God, if you've been discouraged, I want to say to you, God is working even when it doesn't look like God is working, and God just isn't done working yet. Does that make sense? Okay, that's all of a sudden when you authentic faith, a strength. And the good news is this. Look at the right-hand side. Fear, anxiety, guilt, loneliness, discouragement, and meaningless living. Okay, those things are toxic. The stronger my faith gets, the less I look like the right column, and I get emotionally healthier. Does that make sense? Okay, and authentic faith leads to transformation. And then the last point is this, and we'll wrap up with this. It is never too late to come home. It is never too late to come home. You know what I love about this? John 21, the book ends with the story of Peter. And just look up here for a second. Peter, in John 21, Peter is not in good shape. Jesus has been crucified, and right before that, Peter looks at him and says, Jesus, look, all the disciples, they're wimps, but I got your back, man. I will not fail you. I have got your back. You can count on me. Then what does he do? Denies him. How many times? He denies him not once, not twice. By the way, John is very good with numbers. 7 miracles, 7 witnesses, 7 I ams. John goes, he denies him not once, not twice, but 3 times, okay? And, he literally swears, okay? A little girl scares him. And then he runs off. And then 3 days later, the disciples tell Peter, guess what? You know that guy you denied? He's back. If you're Peter, is this good news or bad news? I bet Matthew's going, he's going to turn you into a toad. You can picture this. And Peter's so discouraged, he goes back to his former life. And he goes back to fishing. And Jesus appears on the beach. And Peter recognizes it's in Jesus. And Peter jumps into the water and swims to shore. And Jesus cooks him breakfast. Unbelievable. Grace in action. And then they have a conversation in John 21 that is one of my favorite things in the entire Bible. Jesus looks at this guy that let him down. Raise your hand if you have ever let God down. If your hand didn't go up, delusion is your gift. He looks at Peter. He let God down, racked with guilt, background of failure, and he says this. He says, do you love me? 3 times, basically. Changes tense, but he says, do you love me? Feed my sheep. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. And what's interesting is this. He looks at this failure and he asks him 3 present tense questions and gives him 3 future tense assignments. And not one time does Jesus bring up Peter's past, and not one time does he point out his flaws, and not one time does he bring up his failure. That's the Jesus in the New Testament. Jesus could not care less about your past. He is very interested in therapeutically bringing you to the present, having you let go of your past and giving you a brand new start and a brand new future that is unlike anything. And Peter goes on to live a life where they have built buildings to that guy in Rome to this day. Your future could be unlike anything you've ever dreamed if I'll let Jesus take care of my past and I'll follow him fully. That's what John wants us to know. What he's saying is this: it's never too late to come home. Let's pray together.